Welcome everyone to our last live event of 2014. I can't believe I'm saying that since I this year I was adamant. I was taking December off from the party line. I was going to focus on finishing my Christmas knitting, and so I'm excited. We have another first time visitor to the party line. We have Vicki Twigg. So welcome, Vicki. Yay. It's our very last event of the year, and it's nice to go out with something really cool and creative and
Honored to be here.
fun. So yeah, so welcome. And so we're here to talk about Twig Stitch, your
Mhm.
first book. It just came out,
Yeah.
and which has a cool technique for creating double-sided or reversible knitting. It looks great on both sides, but it doesn't have that heavy weight of traditional double knitting
Right.
that is
Right.
always done in stockinette stitch. So this is like texture and color and without that weight. So that is a very cool thing. So I love color work, and I love things that look great on both sides because nobody
Mhm.
wants an ugly backside in any way, shape, or form. So welcome, and I'm really excited to talk to you about this book. So tell us how this kind of eureka moment came about where you figured out how to do this. And thank you for figuring it out so that we didn't have to.
Yeah, it was an interesting process. It was just 3 years ago, actually. I had just moved to Chicago, and I was looking at two color rib, which is all the knit stitches in one color, all the purl stitches in a different color. And when you turn it over, you see strands of yarn across the back where the color's been carried across the stitch where you're not using it. So it looks like the back of Fair Isle. And it's really nice. It's a lovely effect, but it is one-sided. So I got it into my head that I wanted to see this rib looking good on both sides, um, to see the two colors, look like a rib on both sides. So I went home and played with yarn. I could sort of visualize it in my head what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted the result to be. And I went home thinking, well, let me just play with yarn and see if I can work out some way to do this. And I did it. It took an evening or two. And that kind of started me off on months of exploration and um, trying out all sorts of different types of knitting. First of all, I was trying out different ways of holding the yarn and how to actually get at it, because the way I first did it, I could see what was happening mechanically with the yarn, but it was kind of awkward the way I was holding the yarns. So once I got the mechanics of it working in my head, I had to then say, well, how do I hold the yarn so that this works easier? And that was the first hurdle. And initially, I was holding one yarn in each hand. That was how I managed to get it working properly. And I then just tried out all the different kinds of knitting I knew about, and found that initially it was a rib, but there are other texture stitches you can do. So in
Yeah.
the end, it's a technique rather than a rib stitch. Um,
Yeah, which we'll talk about
yep.
in when we kind of go through some of the projects in the book. And also there's also a little stitch dictionary section of the book as well that gives you some ideas of other things that you can use for your scarves or Mobius's, or maybe is that Mobii, and hats and other kinds of projects where you want both sides to look good. And of course, the great thing about hats looking great on both sides is you can turn them inside out and you kind of have a whole nother hat. So and
You've got
yeah, and one of the projects is this cover project here,
yes.
which Tony says she just loves it, which I agree. So tell us about this project. This looks is this is a Mobius, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
If I can pull it back far enough to see. There you go.
Oh, beautiful.
And
It has such lovely drape to it.
it does. When you see it live, you realize how soft it is. It's in sock weight yarn, and I had several years ago. I don't know when Kat Bordy first worked out her wonderful way of casting on for a Mobius, but when I came across that, I thought, ooh, I need to try that. So I cast on her method and then started doing Twig Stitch for it, but that gives you, at the cast on point along the center, that gives you a line of stitches that are just single yarn.
Yeah.
So I realized quite quickly I needed to work out how to cast on in 2 colors. And this is essentially, if you know how to do an Italian cast on, this is essentially an Italian cast on done around the cable of the needle, where you circle it round.
Yes.
Kat Bordy's method. Instead of just picking up the one yarn and then doing a yarn over for the stitch, you pick up one yarn under the cable, then you go under the cable the other way to pick up the other yarn. So working around the cable loop, you're doing it out.
Oh,
and
very
then when
cool.
you round again, you meet the yarns that went underneath the needle, under the
Wow.
cable.
Yeah, and I took a class from Kat Bordy a long time ago, and I had asked her, I said, has anybody figured out how to do this Mobius where you're doing color work, but you have nice both sides? Because normally if you do a Mobius, you have to do a stitch that's reversible, like basket weave stitch or garter stitch, or, I mean, something that looks the same on both sides, because you're going to see both sides of it where it divides along the cable, right here where that dark green stripe is, because it's basically reversing itself. So, and she said, oh, there was some brilliant mathematician who was a knitter who figured out some crazy way to do it. But she said, don't even try. She said, nobody else in the world can do it. So it's nice to see that Mobius used in a way that gives you great color on, because you see the wrong side in a Mobius on half the scarf. So
I haven't tried it, but I would say if you cast on this way, like I said in the book, you could then knit double knitting from it.
Yeah. Oh,
interesting.
I know. Yeah, it's going to make a very thick fabric though. So that's the
experiment with.
Yeah. Yeah, very nice. So and although the stitch patterns are kind of toward the back of the book, that's kind of stitch dictionary thing. We're going to do it first because I'm a rebel, and I hate that.
One of the reviews where they said this is the strength of the book, that it gives a lot of ideas for people to play around with.
Well, and that's the thing. It shows you it shows you what is, and this is just kind of a smattering of what's possible using this technique. But what I really love is that you can get, because this shows the we'll call it the right side and the wrong side, though there's no wrong side. Side A and side B.
I said A and B side usually in the book.
Yeah, so it's the side A and side B of the same knitting. And what I really love is how, like on that first sample, how you get that cable effect on side A, and you get a very simple, smooth version on side B.
You barely see it. That one, you can actually do that with a single color rib. If you're doing a knit one, purl one rib, you can, when you're doing your odd rows, say, you switch over to knit stitches, but you leave the purl stitches where they are, so that the purl stitches, which show as knit stitches on the other side, stay straight. But you switch around just your knit stitches on the surface.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean,
but in a good way, crazy. It's crazy in a good way.
You can do that in a single color rib as well.
Wow.
But it does give you the chance to do it on both sides. So I've got I think I showed you this yesterday.
I love this. Your swatches.
It's like my knitting book.
Yeah, it looks to me like carpet, like when you do get carpet samples or wallpaper samples, they're always on those big rings, which actually made me think about keeping all of my swatches on one of those big rings, because boy, is that convenient.
I have one of these. It's down in my basement somewhere, which is all my original little samples where I was testing things. And they're all like 2 or 3 inches square of scrap yarns, but as soon as I realized I had something unusual, I started keeping them rather than reclaiming the yarn, which I would normally do. And so I've got another knitting needle. This is a circular knitting needle that these are all on. And I have another knitting needle. These are ones where I wore out the tips, so I can't knit with them anymore.
Funny.
Well,
It's
I
convenient.
think,
It's very convenient. So
well,
now this
the
next one has very much like a honeycomb texture to it,
yeah,
which is really
um,
pretty.
I can show you this one.
Oh
That's
yeah.
the one-sided. But the next one here, you can see it's one pattern on one side, which I did on the odd rows, but the other side of the same piece has a different pattern, which I worked on the even rows. So you can do that one-sided ribbing, I mean cable work on both sides with a different pattern, which is great fun.
Yeah, it was actually more than I could wrap my head around when I was, because people ask me all the time, well, because I have an online class on double knitting, can you do this with other stitches, so that you're not just doing stockinette on both sides in order, can you get anything reversible that isn't stockinette on both sides? It's still two colors. And I said, I've never seen it. Now, of course, I can't say I've never seen it. So I have seen it, and I'm looking forward to once I finish my own holiday knitting to dragging out the needles and giving this a shot, because I love things where you have a beautiful both sides. That's especially the thing about scarves, and is that when you see them in books and they're done in color work and stuff, they're always wrapped very perfectly on the model's neck, so you can't see the backside of the scarf. But in real life, nobody walks around like that. The wind blows, you see both sides of the scarf, you wrap it really quickly around your neck, and you shouldn't have to walk around with a stylist to like make
Right,
sure your scarf
right.
is in the right
The
place.
same with towels, you want it to be able to see both sides. I've seen some stitches where they're different on each side, but still nice both sides.
Yeah. And I think
Different.
we had Wendy Bernard here who just did the up down all around stitch dictionary. And there's a bunch of stitches in hers where she shows you the backside, and it's different, but at least it's not ugly. And a
Right.
lot of things like the backside of cables, uh,
Yeah.
ugly unless you do a reversible cable. So yeah, Savannah Gal says she loves this honeycomb pattern. It looks very cushy and warm, which it makes me, when I look at it, it makes me want to squeeze it, which is probably a good thing. And then I was just really, kind of stunned by this bottom one, because it almost looks like a combination of lace and brioche, and it has
Yeah.
that kind of brioche sort of color on color look to it, but it's not, it's not straight up and down. It's
No.
beautiful.
No. That is simply done with increases and decreases,
Yeah, it's
which
just,
is how it's mirrored on each side.
yeah, so pretty. Yeah, Tony agrees. She says the curves are very yummy. Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, they're
Um,
yummy. It's yummy is a good word for it. Thank you, Tony,
yeah.
for contributing that. And then this is the green and blue, the green and green one, the two tones of green. What I was really fascinated with by this is that, it's checkerboard, but it has texture.
Yes.
It's not just a stockinette checkerboard.
No, no, although that looks good. This one actually is part of the section, the green section in the book is where the yarns are used unevenly. With most of them, based on the rib, the colors are used alternately as you knit.
Yeah.
This section, you might use one color, you might go A, B, 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 A, so that you use one color for just one every fourth stitch in a row, and the other three are the other color. But then you would switch for the other row,
Wow.
and a combination of other things. One of the sections at the beginning, the basic rib, I had a lady in a class in Chicago who made a mistake on it and came up with this.
That's a
Um,
beautiful mistake.
Nice. It is, isn't it? Now
Yeah.
that's it. You can all over pattern, but you can use the same technique to do designs. You just put it where you want it, and that just shows on one side. There's a kind of
Wow.
shadow on the other side, but that mistake puts a bar of the wrong color across in front of a knit stitch,
Wow.
behind it. Hence, it's a mistake.
Yeah.
So that can be used, and in fact, in this green example you've got here, it's a 3x3 pattern, and the center one of each three is the mistake stitch.
Yeah, and I think we can't call it mistake. I think we have to call it serendipity, right? I think we can call it serendipity because I think
Oh,
a lot of things that are invented are mistakes, right? So it's like trying to do something else and then you find something that you didn't know was there. So we're going to call that a serendipity stitch.
and
So, yeah, and then I love this kind of this argyle is so pretty.
yes,
And it's one of my favorite patterns and I think it's cuz I'm so addicted to anything Scottish as a result of Diana Gabaldon's Outlander books. I just love all things Scottish. I can't help myself. And when I see Argyle, I totally get the whole Scots
yeah.
thing. So, but that's really pretty. And then the blue one kind of, to me, showed how you can sort of mix and match your stitches and come out with
Mhm.
something. Um, oh no, Tony just said Stitchanok instead of Sassanach, which is what the main character calls his wife, the other main character in the book. That's brilliant, Tony. I actually might have to steal that. But the blue one really shows kind of how you can add so much texture in,
Yeah.
uh, which is so pretty. Is this a combination of knits and pearls?
The blue ones, I believe that is kind of a two-sided mistake stitch. So not you don't just get the bar across the front of the knit stitch on one side, you do it on both sides.
Oh, very
And if you do
cool.
that all the way across, essentially what you're doing for that one row is double knitting. But it's double knitting with the purl side showing out instead of the knit side
Inside
showing
showing
out.
out.
So you
Yeah.
get a purl bump on both sides in the opposite color.
Yeah.
And of course, if you did it on every row, you would end up with double knitting, purl side out. But if you do it for one row and then do a twig stitch row in between, that locks it back in together.
Yeah.
And this a
Crazy.
variation of different colors on it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So,
That's actually quite an easy one to do.
yeah, well, maybe I just needed an extra cup of coffee this morning or something. So it didn't look so crazy to me. So this is beautiful. This is a perfect example of how something can be I mean so beautiful and multicolored and gorgeous on both sides. So so tell us about this design and how this one works because it looks like woven plaid. It's really beautiful.
Does. Yes. And interestingly, I had the idea for this about maybe 5 years ago, long before I got to Twig Stitch. And I tried to do it in other kinds of stitches, working with two colors together or alternately on stitches, but nothing really worked out to look like what I wanted. Um, so it got put on the back burner for a while in my thinking, and then we moved, of course, which is an upheaval. But when I got to Twig Stitch, I realized that it was a controlled use of two colors. So the way I had been trying to do it before was just use two strands together, knitting with double yarn,
Yeah.
and it was messy. I mean, it looked okay, but it was messier than I wanted. So getting this with a controlled use of two colors, as I say, I was able to do the woven effect. Basically, you get the four balls of yarn and divide them in half. One half of each forms the vertical stripes. The other half does the horizontal stripes.
Yeah.
And
It's beautiful.
working row, one of your yarns does a horizontal stripe right across the row, and the other yarn, you change it as you go across in target fashion.
Yeah, it's really it's such a beautiful woven effect and I like the colors on this too. I think they're just really fresh and beautiful. So,
I've got that.
oh my gosh, it really does look woven in real life. People who come back and watch this recording later will have to take my word for it. So, because they won't see the video, but I mean, it really looks like woven fabric with really great drape.
Yeah,
So, really,
and it's got fantastic drape.
yeah, really
But that's
beautiful.
that's really it's the same technique. It's just using it as seed stitch instead of a rib.
Wow, beautiful. And this, I think, is a perfect example that shows you how you can really change up how something looks and
Mhm.
by the color placement on this, where
Yes.
it's in traditional double knitting, every place where you see green on this, you on one side you would see yellow on the other, or it's just so it's I mean it's crazy. It's
You
yeah,
could
it's
do
mind blowing.
a version of this in double knitting, because I worked with green throughout, and then the orange, the yellow and the purple alternated. So you could do the same thing in double knitting, and then the rows where you've got the narrow stripe, you would just simply do the whole row, or two rows in this case, with
Yeah.
the colours around.
Yeah, this is really cool. Savannah Gal says it's like two scarves in one, which I agree. It's a very different look on the other side. But the nice thing is you can just throw it around your neck and not worry about the other
Yes,
side, the
and
ugly side showing.
this is where the theme colours come in.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully whatever team colors you're using are actually kind of cool and they're not like orange and blue for the Gators. Sorry, Gator fans, but I mean it's an ugly color
It wasn't
combination.
anything like that. There weren't all that many colours available in this yarn, and I chose three that I liked together, so
Yeah,
it was
very
not
pretty.
what was there.
Funny. Um, Yeah, Tony says this was her inspiration. She says, "Can you tell I'm a huge fan of the book?" No, I couldn't tell, Tony. You're keeping it really quiet.
Yeah.
It's very subtle, Tony.
One
So,
is the basic straightforward rib stitch.
yeah. So this beanie is so pretty, and so you can flip this beanie inside out, and it's going to be nice on the other side, right?
Yeah, I dropped
Which
half my stuff on the floor.
which is really nice. You can actually change the color of your hat
Yeah,
without
the
yeah,
other
okay.
side.
And for people who are coming back to watch, the other side is all like blue cables with little purple stripes. It's
Mhm.
really really pretty. Yeah, Susan says she loves the hat, which I agree. It's like you get a totally different look by flipping
Yeah.
the hat inside out, and you get cables on both sides, which is like, yeah, the
This
whole cable thing
probably
is crazy.
this is probably not one that you would do as your first project because
Yes.
it starts in the center with double point needles and works out. So I would say practice with the technique a bit, get used to it, and then when you're comfortable with it and you know what you're doing, then by all means have a go. It's not a difficult one. You're just dealing with double point needles.
Yeah, or two circulars if you're like me. And I
Yeah,
hate double pointed needles because they're I
yeah.
always I just can't
I kind
stand
of
it.
come back to them. And this, by the way, is the only example of the 2x2 rib used around the cuff.
On the edge, yeah. I don't need anything on double pointed needles except for I cord. I once I discovered magic loop and two circular needles, it's just less to keep track of. And if you have dogs like I do, which they're very quiet right now, but if you have dogs like I do, and invariably somebody runs through my yarn and I find my knitting halfway across the room, yeah, the double pointed needles, not good. Not good. So, yeah, Marina says she loves seeing the actual knitted garments, which I agree. I think this is one of those books where I think the photography is beautiful, but the
It is. You did a fantastic job
it's
with it.
very pretty, but
Yeah.
I think that you don't really get a feel for how really supple this fabric is. And because in double knitted fabric, it tends like traditional double knitting, it tends to be pretty thick, even if you're using a
Mhm.
lighter weight yarn. So I think to be able to
Well,
see
it's
that,
essentially two fabrics, isn't it?
so here's a very cool example of, I think probably the mitts are not a bad project to start with. Would you
No,
think?
actually, they'd be good. And this hat is knitted from the bottom up.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
like those better. That's kind of my thing. So
Now, I knitted flat and put buttonholes on each side, but actually you could knit it in the round just as easily.
yeah,
Um, Leave out the edge stitches and just keep on round.
yeah, and then
Um,
you could use some decorative stuff on the side if you wanted to
Together because I show them when I go to teach and
yeah.
they invariably get lost. So um, the mittens are great fun.
Yeah, and I mean, what a great thing to be able to flip them inside out and
Yes, this
y-
is one each way. So, and I deliberately designed them with the thumb in the center so that you can actually, if you wanted to, you could wear one each way out and they would still fit.
Yeah,
They don't,
that would be my thing because I'm a rebel, as we've all established.
your left hand one doesn't become the right hand when you turn it inside out.
Yeah, well and yeah, that's the really nice thing when you have a mitten that's completely the same on both sides, so you
Yeah,
don't have a right and a left. So
exactly.
especially,
If
if
you like
you
stitches, you could knit these in the round,
yeah, on two circulars or or magic loop.
whatever you're comfortable with.
Whatever makes you happy. So
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
thought this was a really interesting example of, because you can really see the drape in this fabric, which I
Yeah,
think that, yeah, it really shows the difference with, this technique versus traditional double knitting.
yeah.
This is,
This was a lovely yarn to work with.
what is this
Um,
knit with?
it's I forget what the actual content of the yarn is. It's a Manos del Uruguay,
Yeah.
so um,
So it's likely wool or wool and alpaca then.
yeah, it's in the book.
Yeah. So Kate
But
says this is really, really pretty, which I agree. I think just the way this drapes over the shoulder is really lovely. And when you put work into a shawl or a wrap of some kind, it's really nice that the other side gives you basically a separate garment.
yeah,
So,
yeah. You could do a lot more with color on this. Because it's done in tiers. So the first three are between my fingers. You cast on along the top edge. I'll do it on the light side so you can see better. The first three fans between my fingers are knitted separately on short rows, and then the next tier you do another row of fans. There's four of them, and
and then it
then
gets wider
next
as you go.
there's another row of five, and each tier gets 2 rows bigger and therefore that much wider. And so you're going from small fans out to big ones, which gives you the curved shaping around the back.
Yeah.
The
It's
whole thing gets pretty.
yeah, really, really pretty.
And
Yeah.
actually, once you've got the technique for the fans on the first row, you can do the whole thing. It
Yeah.
kind of knits itself once you've got going, because the pattern for each tier of fans is exactly the same. You just go 2 rows further.
Oh, great. Yeah, and
So
Roxy says she needs this in her wardrobe, which I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I knit all the time, and I have zero shawls. I have zero hats. I only have a scarf because I taught a Mobius class and
uh-huh.
I knit one for myself during the class. So, but everybody I know in my family, they have scarves and hats and all kinds of warm stuff, and I just hardly ever knit for myself. And I was looking
I'm
at this
doing that.
thinking,
I've actually got one. I can
it,
show it to you here.
it's
I've got
such a
one.
useful piece.
This is the scarf from the front of the book, the Mobius.
Yeah.
And you can see one side is a pink, which grades from light through to this deep raspberry color. I've very nearly got to the end. And the other side is variegated. And I thought I was going to get this, wild mix of colors. And when I had done the round, I met the same point in the color
Coming back.
um, coming back. It goes through the set of colors 3 times on the way around. And it's not quite accurate on the lengths. So you can see where it changes color, kind of migrates to and fro,
Yeah.
but it's
Isn't that
very
funny?
blue and green. And
Yeah.
I really like how it's come out.
Yeah,
The colors are,
I think this the scarf that we're looking at, or this little wrap, would be
yeah,
done in variegated color on one side and a solid on the other, would be really pretty too.
yeah, yes. And as I say, you could switch colors each tier if you wanted.
Yeah, if you wanted to get crazy,
Or
or
do that.
you're working through your stash, one or the other, which
Yeah.
yeah, we all have those days. It's like, well, what do I have in my closet?
Or do
So
crazy colors on one side against black or something,
yeah.
which would look.
Yeah, so if you wore the black side, you would have like the secret crazy color underneath. It's kind of like wearing leopard print underwear with a business suit. Only you have to know, right? So, yeah, and I think this is a perfect example of how the two-sided, the color on the different sides really how
Mhm.
incredibly beautiful that is, but also how it almost creates you get a shadow of the white on the purple side and a shadow of the purple on the white side, and it really helps set off the stitch work. And
Yeah.
Tony, by the way, says you're inspiring her, so we love that when knitters get inspired. Tony's going to be heading to her stash
Please
shortly.
let me know if you come up with other ideas for patterns. I would love to know about it. I'd love to see stuff.
So tell us about this
The
scarf.
mothwing, the
Yeah.
mothwing scarf. Let me see. It's very drapey. This one. It's lace weight, done on size 2s, which I prefer for lace weight. I tried it on 3s because lace is often done on bigger needles to get more
Yes.
of a lacy effect. I found personally my knitting was a little neater on 2s, so that's what I've done it. That's
It's
knitted
just
downwards, so you've got the bottom edge there.
it's just
I
really
actually
gorgeous.
this shape I got quite early on. I designed it, and in fact I've put up a pattern on Ravelry of the same shape but done in a garter stitch pattern.
Yeah. So pretty. Yeah, Savannah Gal says this is a gorgeous scarf, which I agree though. I think if I knit this scarf, I would not give it away. I would have to keep it, regardless of my initial intent. This is one of those things that once you get it done, it's like, no, I don't know
Yeah,
anybody worthy. I love my sisters, I love my nieces, I love my daughter-in-law, but
it's
no.
really skinny in the middle, so it's a great summer weight scarf because all the large section of it hangs down.
Yeah,
So
so it's not wrapped around your keeping your neck hot.
yeah,
So yeah, Marina says wow, which I agree. This is definitely a wow project. So I have a sneaking suspicion that no one in this room, I mean, I bet everyone in this room would admit that if they knit this, they would keep it themselves, even if they had started out as a gift.
yeah.
So if they're being honest, they would admit that this
Uh-huh.
this would be one of those things they say, maybe I'll get them a gift certificate to Starbucks or something instead. Yeah. Savannah Gal says, you betcha. So,
Establish a photo gallery so I see what people have been making.
oh, yeah. So, because this is, I mean, and it's really interesting because, I can see that if this is done in two shades that are closer to each other,
Mhm.
that it has a very different look than if you go like at two ends of the spectrum where it becomes more graphic.
Yeah,
So
it
you could do this in black and white, or you could do it
oh yeah,
in like cream and tan and have a totally different
yeah.
look to it.
Or
So
you could use specialty yarns. Like there are some that have got sparkles and sequins in.
yeah,
So, that would be amazing as well.
yeah, very pretty. So, and for me, there's no such thing as too much bling. So I love sparkles and sequins and
Yeah, I
something.
have a friend in Chicago who's doing the most gorgeous lace with beads on it. This would be fantastic with beadwork done on one side or both or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, so pretty. Marina says yes to sparkles. So
Yep.
I'm like a cat with shiny objects. I always gravitate in the yarn shop to anything that's sparkly or glittery or has beads on it, and I can't help myself. It's just the way I am. So and I don't need to apologize for it.
Not at all. Not at
No,
all.
not at all. So, and this is another example of where you take kind of that graphic. I love this swoopy pattern where it's
Yeah.
where you have that graphic color change, and it's it's so sharp. It almost has like a entrelac look to it with the
Yeah.
with the diagonals, switching direction. It actually
But
looks like, yeah, it looks like a crazy like brioche
yeah.
version of entrelac, that's reversible, which is
Yeah.
a little bit mind blowing. Yeah, it's like Muskers. It's the same thing. It's brioche meets entrelac, except that it's also reversible. Which,
Yeah. Yes. And
yeah,
this the same thing done in a square, and you can see you just knit it straight. It's increase and decreases. So,
yeah, is
but this is another one where you start at the top and knit outwards. So for the first half of each diamond, you're just increasing out in 8 sections, but you increase along one side of the diamond. And then from there, once you're at the center of the first set of diamonds, you then switch the increases and decreases and come down.
wow. It's really, yeah. Patricia says this is gorgeous, which I agree. I don't know. I don't know that I could be tempted to give away any of these projects though. I think,
There it is. That's the other side of it.
oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I wish people could see, people who
Only,
come back later could see this, but it's just,
I think it's
yeah,
a finger.
and it's fingering weight. So,
But I think the pattern's done in multiple sizes, so you would just need to work out what your gauge is and do it different a different size if you got a different gauge. Just work out how many stitches you would need for the whole hat,
and then just
and then
work your way there.
work out using that size. Yeah, it just
Wow.
needs to divide into, I think, multiples of 16.
Very cool. Yeah, Savannah
It's
Gal says she can't wait to try this method, which
yeah,
I agree. I'm looking forward to finishing my Christmas knitting because I definitely want to put some of this on my needles. And I mean, I love new techniques, or I love learning new techniques, and it's always nice to put an extra, quiver in your knitting arrow. So
absolutely.
it's just, it's something else you can add to your list of knitting skills, and it's always good to up your knitting mojo, as I call it.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, Mooskers ask, is everything in the book done in fingering weight?
Not quite, no. I tend to gravitate towards thinner yarns, partly because I like that. I can put more detail on things, which I like. But no, this one actually, this hat is in
I think that's our
medium
next
weight,
project, right?
worsted to medium weight. Yeah,
Is that in
and
it's a worsted weight yarn?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
DKing?
No, I would say it's
It's
thicker than
worsted.
DK. It's probably up to medium weight,
Yeah. Well, and
but
what's really nice is how warm that's going to be, which of course
yeah,
you want in a hat, because
yeah,
otherwise you wouldn't be wearing one, right? If
right.
you didn't want we didn't want to keep your ears warm. So this
You can,
ear flap hat is actually what you're showing us. You're showing us the other side, which
yeah,
is, I mean, it's just, it's crazy to me that you can, you just flip it inside out. It's a whole nother story. So
yeah,
yeah, very cool. Yeah, Moosker says this looks toasty, and Marina says she wants to knit the snowflake hat, which
yeah.
I agree. And Savannah Gal
They're
says it's
actually
perfect
perfect
for
for
Chicago winters, which
especially
I,
with what they have right now.
yeah, well, Savannah Gal, I was born in Chicago. My son went to college in Chicago. I spent a couple winters in Chicago, or spent winter days in Chicago visiting him. And I honestly don't think anything other than a heated, like, sleeping bag over your head is going to be enough for Chicago
Right.
winters. I went to law school in Cleveland in another life, and it's kind of the same thing. It's just it's so blowy and cold that yeah, you might want to knit two of these and put one inside the other if you're in Chicago. My personal
Just
take on it.
because it's a two-color rib, it does come out a little thicker than if you were working with a single color.
Yeah.
It's not as thick as double knit, but it would, for thickness, it sits between double knitting and single color rib. So that's another reason why I gravitate towards slightly thinner yarns, because they actually knit a little bigger than you would get on single yarn knitting.
Yeah,
So
and
even for the lace weight, it knits up quicker than if you were using just a single strand of lace yarn.
yeah, and the thing too about doing this technique versus the traditional double knitting, which is in stockinette, is for
Mm-hmm.
hats, you're not going to, stockinette just doesn't have that stretch,
Not
which,
quite, no.
yeah, so you're not going to get that fit. So unless you're willing to tie your hat down to your head to keep it from blowing
Mhm.
off, you're not going to get that fit. And I think in knit hats, we kind of want them to,
Mhm.
we want to get, we don't want the hat hair, but we want them to stick to our heads. So otherwise we wouldn't be wearing them. If it wasn't like windy and cold, we wouldn't be wearing a hat. You wouldn't care about it.
Yeah,
But yeah, so that's really cool. And the other side looks beautiful
yeah,
too. So
yeah. And this
yes.
one, I just finished knitting this for my son-in-law without the ear flaps. I left them out, and that's quite easy. You just cast on the same number, but the ear flaps are done on the first row with a short row section, so you
Uh,
just leave it.
just leave them off. Start right
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
So, well, this has all been very like mind blowing and cool. So I know people are going to want to keep up with what's going on as because I know you're.
As a tip for the technique, once people get the idea of how to hold the yarns, as I was saying to you yesterday, that's really the tricky part, is how you're going to hold the two yarns, whether it's one in each hand or both in one hand. And most of my students have been divided between one in each hand and two in the right hand. I've had maybe one or two people who have gravitated to two in the left hand, but it's less common. But worth having a go if you're a continental knitter. But I would say if you're doing both in the right hand, personally I use my pointer and middle finger. But I've had people use a finger and thumb, one for each yarn. We didn't detail that in the book. There's enough.
Well, and and I think just like when you learn to knit, and I think pretty much for everything, but in life, that no two people do it the same way, and there's that awkwardness that it starts with where it doesn't feel natural, and then there's that moment where your brain and your hands like click together.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, now I don't really have to think about it so much because it's like a muscle memory thing. And I think like any new technique, I mean, when I learned how to do two-handed fair isle, it took a while before it was like, oh, this feels really natural and it's fast and I don't think about it anymore. But like any new technique, I think people just need to hang in there while waiting for their brain and their hands to like connect up, and then it's all good.
And look at your knitting and see what's happening and begin to understand how the yarns are twisting around. I see that question coming up. About yarns. It's not quite the same as double knitting. The yarn hold is, but the yarns are held the other way round. Because in double knitting, you don't want the yarns twisting round each other at all. And in Twigg Stitch, you actually do.
Oh, okay. That actually helps me picture it a little better. Yeah, in double knitting, you should be able to separate the front and back and like stick your hand down the middle of it, which is why you have to use those edge stitches or something to hold it together.
Yeah.
So
that's something that I've had with one or two people, that they have accidentally slipped into double knitting, and so that it turns into two fabrics instead of them locking together into one.
Oh, Susan wants to know if there's a video for it.
Not yet. We're in discussion.
Yeah. Just finishing a book is enough work at the moment. But what I really like, though, is that instead of doing drawings for the technique, which I always find very, very, very hard to read because they just look so flat, which they don't look like hands to me, and I can't tell. So when they have like arrows, and it means nothing to me. So I like that in the book they used photographs.
Yeah, so do I.
Yes.
Their policy at Interweave is actually to use illustrations where they can. I think it gives them the freedom to show everything, and you can show the exact path of the yarn and make it very clear. But they said there were just an unprecedented number of illustrations needed. So they got me in, and in fact, it's my hands in the book.
Yeah, because I don't think that they couldn't be just reusing illustrations they'd used in 100 other books. So they were going to be starting from scratch on this one. So, yeah.
That was a fascinating adventure for me, going and having my hands photographed.
Yeah, did you get a manicure first?
I did, and we had to get it taken off because it didn't look good on the photos.
Oh no! Oh well, there you have it. So,
if you're likely to take it off, don't put gel on.
Oh yeah.
I hadn't had a manicure before, so
yeah, that's a project getting it back off. So, yeah. So so Savannah Gal says this is really interesting, and which I agree. And Marina says thank you for the little tip on holding the yarns. And so people will be patient because you'll figure it out. You're knitters, you're problem solvers, right? So, all right. So you can follow Vicki at vickitwigg.com, oddly enough. So, so you can see what's going on.
I can get it, but I'm not very good at keeping up time-wise on that. My husband usually does the technical stuff for me. So.
Oh, how nice.
We probably need to update it now.
Probably so. I think so. Yeah. My husband barely knows, God bless him. He never listens to these, so I can say it. Barely knows how to turn a computer on. And of course, I live online. So we have the opposite situation in my family. So, and then
pencil and paper whenever I can.
Oh no, I don't even own any like writing paper anymore. But so, and on Facebook, what you don't want is, what you're looking for is Twig Stitch on Facebook. So,
Yes.
oh, and there you see like all my family and stuff because it's inviting me to invite them. Um, and then, of course, if you're not lucky enough to win today in the chat room, because everybody knows, hang out
Mhm.
when we finish recording because we're going to be giving away a copy of the book, courtesy of Interweave
Mhm.
FNW. And but if you don't, you can always, of course, go to the Planet Pearl Facebook page, which oddly enough is facebook.com/Planet Pearl.
Mhm.
And you can, because I'll be posting tomorrow. What's today? Thursday. I'll be posting tomorrow for you to win your very own copy, um, so that you can, you can win a copy, which is always good because knitters, we love free stuff. And well, who doesn't? And if you don't win, then you can help support Planet. Oh, call your local yarn store first because we need to support them. But if they don't have it and they're not getting it in immediately, you can come over to planetpearl.com. You're going to click on books, and it will take you to the Twig Stitch where you can click on
Mhm.
that, and there's a little link there where you can buy the book through Amazon and help support Planet Pearl at the same time because we get a little commission. And actually, the commission gets bigger as if we sell more things during the month. So we
Mhm.
get um, we get a little help there to bring you events like this and pay for like, go to meeting and
Yeah.
hosting our website. So you don't want to miss that out. You don't miss that opportunity to like do two good things at the same time, get yourself a book and help us out. So anyway, thank you so much for being here, Vicki.
Oh,
I'm really looking forward to trying out this technique because
yeah. Well,
yeah,
I'm looking forward to seeing some photographs of what people produce.
yeah, and and you can reach Vicky, of course, you can post it on her Facebook page, or you can reach Vicky's contact information is on her website. So we're getting lots of thank yous. People, I know it's mind-blowing to me, that I now have the opportunity to create all kinds of things with no ugly backside. So I'm not talking about my backside, I'm talking about my knitting's backside. So it's such a cool thing to see yeah, it's funny. Tony just said she just tried the index and thumb technique. So she finds it so much easier. So I think everybody's kind of going to find their own little
Yeah.
way that it works for them, and for people
Well,
who,
spread the word about the finger and thumb because I think a lot of people quite like that.
yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that tip. And yeah, so many thanks, and you're getting many thanks in the room today. So hang out, people, because I'm about to give away a book. And for those who are listening to this later, and it's not next week, check out our Facebook page and you can have a chance to win a copy there. So thanks